So welcome, Anne. Thank you for agreeing to do the Sysi-calls with us today. We call it the Sysi-calls because we're going to have a series of podcasts, and we're just going to get, interesting people like yourself to come on, tell us about what they do, and it'd be a chance for people just to learn a little bit more about some of the topics that they don't do. So thanks for joining us today.
You're
Um,
very welcome,
and
James. Nice to be.
and you've got a business called Lead with Sustainability.
That's right.
And it's all about how companies can be more sustainable. And the thing that I like the most about it is, you live this in your life. I see your LinkedIn posts, I see the kind of stuff that you're interested in, and you're all about trying to save the planet and trying to be kinder to the earth, and all the things which we all need to do a bit more of. So I was delighted when you agreed to do this, and really interested to see what we're going to talk about today.
Well, you're very welcome, James. I mean, yes, I must admit, Lead with Sustainability is a company I set up basically because I felt that we absolutely need to do something now about climate change. And that's what I'm trying to do, both through my company and, yeah, in my personal life too.
And the last conversation we had, you were even saying you've gone as far as to remove the car from your own life.
I have, yes. I was, I guess, trying to just reduce my impact in terms of emissions, and I got to the point really when the car batteries started going. So I decided that I would be better just to get rid of it. And to be honest, I'm doing pretty well on that. Surprisingly easy, actually. And even outside urban areas, I think most people think that if you live in London, not having a car is a sensible thing to do. I live quite rurally, but at least I'm sort of a mile from a town centre, so I can do most things fairly easily without it.
Which is great, isn't it? So what would you say would be the biggest challenge of having no car now?
Well, it is. It makes every journey a bit of an adventure. You have to think about, how you're going to get there, whether it's public transport or, for longer journeys, and potentially, I would still hire a car. I'm not saying that I will never do that. Sometimes that's most convenient. The train is, of course, in terms of emissions, far better. So if you can go by public transport, then that is the best way to travel. And I think that that relates to any business, really, in terms of how can you save emissions? 26% of the UK's emissions are based on transport, and 90% of that is road transport. So if you can reduce any of those journeys even a little bit by combining journeys, say, or yes, working from home or doing remote meetings like we're doing here, then obviously that has a positive impact in terms of your overall emissions and helps the planet too.
Definitely. But I say one of the challenges probably just you'd have to be a little bit more prepared, I guess. It's a little bit more planning.
Yeah, I mean, although I would say that public transport is actually far more pleasant in many cases, than being stuck in, dare I say, lots of traffic congestion. And you might well find that, if you're stuck in roadworks or there's been a crash, then quite often we sort of avoid thinking about that in terms of, the car versus public transport. Whereas, in fact, I really enjoy traveling by public transport. It's a bit more social. Car sharing, similarly, if you can share with a colleague, it saves time, and you can maybe have discussions about meetings and things like that. So there's an awful lot of benefits just in terms of thinking, how can I reduce fuel use overall? And I
Mm.
think as soon as we start thinking that way, it knocks into all sorts of other areas too.
And I think for me, it's always a bit of a treat going on the train, for instance. You can kind of relax a bit, or you can do some work, or you look out the window and you see all kinds of things you just wouldn't see on the road. So I am actually a bit of an advocate of the train, because it's kind of exciting for me. Maybe I need to get out a bit more, but I do quite enjoy that. So in terms of the challenges that all businesses got different challenges, and definitely big ones and small ones, but in the basics of what are the sustainability challenges for many businesses at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of things to do with sustainability are actually to do with general business operations anyway. I mean, if you think about cost of living crisis, fuel prices, and things like that, that's another big area that businesses can actually save money. And that's what I really like about focusing on sustainability, because quite often, if you improve your processes, if you reduce your journeys, if you just lower your heat or switch off half an hour early, then you are saving your business money as well. So we're reaching quite uncertain times, and I think the focus will be much more on sustainability going forwards. Another reason that we need to be looking at this is because the government has massive targets to reach for 2030 and 2050, and they are already mandating that the largest companies report on sustainability, and that is likely to come down to smaller businesses too.
Mm. And in terms of, I guess, sustainability and climate change are hand in hand, I guess, but there may be some elements that tie in more with one or the other.
Yes, I mean, so I guess sustainability is really looking at how we use things best, and the climate change impact tends to fall out of that. So the climate change impact is all about greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, particularly methane. And I mean, short-term methane is perhaps the thing that we should look at most, and that's impacted a lot in terms of things like food waste and agricultural processes and things like that. So every different industry and every different sector and every different business will have different things that they can do that impact it. And certainly, as you say, climate change is the big one. We have to, according to the IPCC report, we have to stop increasing emissions by 2025 and then half them by 2030. That's a massive challenge for everybody.
This is an opportune moment to tell you about what we do at Sysi-calls Solutions. We unify systems into one single pane of glass view. We integrate legacy, existing or proposed systems to provide powerful savings, insights and value. And best of all, we're totally system agnostic. Every device, luminaire, sensor or detector, to us it's just an asset, and we join them up together to form an ecosystem. Thanks for taking the time out, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast.
I guess we've probably touched on a couple of them already, but what could every single business do a little bit more or a little bit less of that are going to help us to make an immediate impact?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I said about fuel and energy use, and that's a big one that any company can do. I mean, at the simplest level, you can swap your home energy to renewable electricity as well. And for many companies, that's a really easy win. In the IT sector, for instance, if you move your services to the cloud, then a lot of the big cloud providers are already focusing as much of their electricity usage on renewables as they possibly can. So that's probably the quickest and easiest thing that anyone can do. Transport, as I say, it's the biggest sector in the UK. 26% of our emissions in 2021 were due to transport. So anything that you can do to cut usage, to encourage employees to maybe use active travel or cycle to work, it's healthy for them and it's healthy for your business too.
So there are some elements of it where you could save money and you could save energy and you could save journeys and such like, but actually there are some upsides for the employee too. And is that one of the things that you try to look at when you're working with a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about all the issues that we've had with mental health over the last few years, active travel, walking, cycling, just getting out in fresh air really helps with that. I think, dare I say, being stuck in a car in your metal box in a traffic jam is probably the worst thing you can possibly do. And perhaps people don't think about that enough. So it's another nice side of there's a new format called ESG, environment, social and governance, which companies are starting to look at. And there's three tied together really nicely. Things that you do in an environmental space often will help employees as well, and make your business run more efficiently. So it makes sense to look at all of these things together.
So if you were, if a company was interested in being more sustainable, looking at their impact and looking at the ESG thing, what would be the kind of thing that you would do when you go in there to, where would you start?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I think each business is different, and it really depends on which sector they're in. So, for instance, a transport-based company, which tends to be my speciality, it's where I've worked for most of my life. It will be looking at, can they electrify? Can they move to electric vehicles? Can they reduce journeys? Can they become more efficient that way? Can they car share or move to reducing journeys by combining them, for instance, as well? So that might be another route. In other sectors, like IT, it's more around housekeeping and moving to the cloud. Some of the special things that you do, looking at how can they be more efficient in terms of the resources that they use. So it really just depends on each different business. And I will look at different aspects of each of those. I did one for building and construction, and there, some of the issues are around concrete, which is actually one of the most harmful things that we can do in terms of reducing emissions, which not very many people know about. So each sector has a different thing that they can look at. Overall, I guess, anything that you can do to reduce journeys, to reduce energy, that tends to work for any company in terms of reduce your heating, cut your journeys, so things like that.
And that's one of the, funny when you're saying about the kind of things that we do. One of the things that I think is interesting about the way that we work now is that one of the, everybody tries to make a big impact. Everybody tries to do one big thing usually, and that can be quite difficult. And it can also be difficult to find again and again and again, because as you said, these targets that people have got from an ESG perspective, they're a stretch. And I think one of the things that we look at is how you can get incremental gains. How can you continuously improve? We try to do that in process, but we try to do it using technology. And I think we're literally in a golden age of where technology can be tech for good, rather than the big brother kind of thing. So, we might try and do something that has an impact on an office block that is good in terms of saving money, in terms of, keep making it a better environment, making the air quality higher. That also is good for the people as well. So, I think with a lot of the sustainability, that there's upsides to, the planet as well as the pocket. And I think if you can get a balance of that, surely that's where we should all try and be.
Yeah, absolutely. I know one of the reasons that I got into this was because I did carbon literacy project training. I mean, I've been interested in in climate change and was trying to do, moving into electric vehicle sector and things like that. But really that clarified for me what we need to do, and we need to act now. And the nice thing about CLP is that it works at the individual level. So it gives everybody that basic education about why we need to do this and what impact they can do. And I think once businesses start thinking like that and their employees start thinking like that, that's when they can really make, massive change, both for the business, but, for their bottom line as well, and profitability. And as you say, if you build in efficiencies of operation in terms of how you're doing it, you think about how your business operates and think, can we do this more sustainably? That is why I call my company Lead with Sustainability, because so often these things will put you ahead of competitors as well.
And it, isn't it a great message? I mean, isn't it a great business message to say, I care for the environment, and I'm trying to make sure that I do my business in a way that is, respectful to the planet. I mean, that's what people have been working towards, that for as long as I can remember.
Yes, I mean, the downside to climate change is that we will be getting more storms, we'll be getting more fires, we'll be getting more floods. So there's both sides of it. If you're helping to reduce that as much as possible, then that's good. But there's also the sort of thing that you have to think, well, how is this going to impact my business going forward? What is the difference going to be when, say for agriculture, when they can't grow, when we can't get, tomatoes from Morocco because there's been storms and things like that. There are so many implications of this. It's a really good idea to be thinking about it and planning for it and taking into account what do you expect for your business to be the factors that will really impact you going forwards.
Definitely. Yeah, sorry. Definitely. I mean, the tomatoes, great example from just this year. The food security in this country's never been more on a knife edge, but we generally managed to fudge through it. but what happens when we don't? And I guess, you know, if you think about a business, they can, you know, you can generally run a business, but what happens when we get on the wrong side of that knife edge? So, you know, one of the things you do also, I believe, is a bit of research as well, where you can really look into what people are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what's really nice about this sector, is that there is a lot of sharing good ideas. I mean, talking about, and you can use case studies from some of the big companies. You know, Tesco, I think, is doing amazing things. They have this thing called Tesco Tinder, where they actually get their suppliers to all share in a marketplace, so that if you have a glut of carrots that you can't get rid of, you know, that aren't good enough perhaps to use in the prime quality that you should be providing to Tesco, then you might be able to sell those at a discount to, say, you know, ready food suppliers instead, and they would use that. I mean, food waste, as I said earlier, is a massive issue for us. You know, it's something like half of all food, it's not, about 30% of all food is wasted worldwide. And the emissions from that, you know, going to landfill, sitting there, producing methane, etc., is enormous. So that's another area. Thinking about, where does your food come from? You know, beef in Argentina on rainforest cleared land is not good. I mean, I feel guilty every time I have a cup of coffee, because actually coffee's not that great either. You know, how far is your food traveling to get to you? So again, you know, things like that. I think over the next 5-10 years, understanding and education about these things is going to improve massively, because it has to. And maybe we all need to start eating more seasonally. You know, tomatoes in January, it's not great. Tomatoes in the UK are in the summer. That's when we should be eating them.
So we could all shop a little bit more locally. We could all take a little bit more notice of what's on the packaging to say, you know, I'm going to try and eat more locally produced vegetables or fruit. And we could all, I guess, yeah, by just caring more about how things get to us, just a little bit could make a big difference if we all do it. So in terms of we talked a little bit about technology, but for you personally, what would be the technology that you just can't live without?
Well, it has to be this, James. I mean, the way that the world has changed in terms of use of IT, I mean, yes, one of the benefits, I guess, out of COVID is that we've all got used to operating like this. So I use this for my training, I use this for meetings, I use this, you know, for my job. I work completely remotely. So, you know, I just couldn't do it without a laptop and without, you know, sensible connection as well. So that to me is critical. I mean, I use all sorts of other tools as well. Isn't it amazing? You know, you kind of think apps only really have been around for 15 years, and yet they've changed our lives completely and utterly. So it just makes you wonder what's going to happen in the next 15 years too. But all of the communication we've got, you know, online tools like Miro and Jamboard and things like that for sharing ideas and project planning and things like that. And just, you know, the fact that we can find out about so much. Yes, I can, you know, do research and find out, you know, what other companies are doing to help smaller businesses and just give them more ideas about what they can do. There was a really lovely one that I think I copied you in on LinkedIn, where they're using the heat from data centers to actually heat up swimming pools and things like that. You know, there's an awful lot of wasted heat that we could be using elsewhere. So, you know, just innovations like that are great to share, and just helps everyone.
Yeah, and we just don't hear enough of good stories like that. I know from, you know, my previous job that you know, a lot of the big greenhouses in the UK are actually sited next to huge anaerobic digestion plants for that reason. So they can use wasted, you know, fruit or vegetables or waste. They can generate, you know, heat from that. They can pump that into the greenhouses and obviously save, you know, money and the environment that way. So there's lots of that kind of thing that goes on, but we just don't hear enough about it. And I guess you know, companies, innovative companies who are trying to create, you know, byproduct, it's a great thing, isn't it? Because if we can use it twice rather than just using it once, isn't that a great thing anyway? Because we're all using vital resource.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a principle of circularity which says look at reducing, recycling, and reusing. And quite a lot of what I do is just really thinking, you know, what within a business can we do that with? How can we reduce the resources that they use or reuse them? And yeah, almost in many ways, recycling is the least efficient thing to do because you're still using those resources in the first place. So anything that you can do in the first two areas will hopefully help you in the third.
So who are the companies that you admire personally?
Oh gosh, well, I've already mentioned Tesco. They're doing quite a lot in terms of reducing packaging as well, moving to electric vehicles. And as I say, these innovative things around how do you maximize opportunity from what you've already got and minimize waste. So I do like what they're doing. Some of the other bigger companies, Amazon's moving to last mile delivery by cargo bikes. I really like cargo bikes. I think there's, they look a bit weird, but they're doing so much, particularly in urban areas as well. They did a trial in July last year, and by November they were already doubling it. So that was in Manchester and London. In terms of smaller companies, I love things like Tree App, which is just a little app which works on the basis of it's nice. It's a win-win for Tree App, it's a win-win for their partners, and it's a win-win for consumers because it's you basically go on, you watch a little advert from a sustainable company usually, and then at the end of having watched that advert, you get the choice to either go to the supplier and maybe check out the products on their website, or you don't have to. And then Tree App will plant a tree for you using NGOs around the world, so you can find out what they're doing in places like Nepal and Kenya. So it works for everybody. The supplier will get the benefit of you offsetting carbon emissions and getting some advertising from people that obviously are interested in sustainability. Tree App gets some money and does some good stuff, and the consumer feels good too. So that's an absolute win-win.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I have a look at that myself, actually. So just to close out, what if somebody wants to get in touch with you and they need some kind of sustainability services? What's the kind of thing that you would offer? Is there something that you kind of offer to show someone maybe what you can do for them and the areas that you can fix for them?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as I say, it depends on each sector. So we have fact sheets, which will give, for each different sector, some ideas about what they can potentially do. We might also be able to do a sort of mini audit, a mini health check for them and give some more specific ideas, just basically looking at what they do and then areas that potentially they could make some changes there. If they're looking at, say, carbon literacy project training, I can tell them all about that as well, and the benefits of doing that. So they basically just come through to my site, leadwithsustainability.co.uk, and put in your contact details there and just get in touch, asking me what you want to know about, and we'll see what we can do.
That would be brilliant. I think, for most people, most companies would benefit from learning a little bit more about how they can lead with sustainability, and I'm sure it would be an education, of things they could do that will just streamline their business. And of course, more and more people want to know that they're working with sustainable businesses. So, just from the selling perspective, every business can really trumpet about the things that they're doing well in sustainability because we all want to see that.
Absolutely. I mean, my background as well as being in transports around communications, so there's PR and reports and fact sheets and things like that. Consumers are much more likely now to be wanting to buy from a sustainable provider. And of course, there's always the investors as well who want to know that you have looked at both risks and opportunities for the future. So there's all sorts of benefits from this, and that's really why I guess the government has also mandated the largest companies to do this. They want to know that they've thought about it, and it will be going down to smaller companies too. So almost the quicker you can start thinking about this, the better, and then hopefully build it into everything that you do.
Great. Well, that's great advice, Anne, and thanks for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to your why, and it's so inspiring. So thanks for doing that for us today. And for anyone who's interested, the Anne's details will be bookended on the end of this podcast. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, James. It's been great being here too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.